Do different DAWs sound different? That is the exact question I asked in this video. If you haven't watched it, you should watch it. And that video was actually a response to a discussion going on Instagram. But today I want to dig a little bit deeper because it turns out we haven't tested everything and there was a small flaw in my testing methodology as well. So I want to set that straight and test a bit more. Let's get started. Alright, so that video got a lot of comments. At the moment of making this video, that video stands at like 1200 comments. I tried to read them all and I picked out the best ones. The first comment that I want to reply to is this one. Let's export from all the DAWs and make the guy blind identify them. Would be a fun video. I think this particular comment is referring to the guy that initially stated that DAWs were sounding different. And honestly, my video was never about blaming that guy or whatever. For me, it's really more talking about certain misconceptions and trying to prove certain things. And this, at least for me, is independent of who made a certain statement. I think we should generally, in whole society, decouple a person from a certain question. Everybody makes mistakes. Not everybody has time to test certain things. I've made mistakes in the past, so let's not blame this on a certain person or whatever. I really think that's not necessary, and I think we should just be a little bit more professional, more scientific about this. And again, I make mistakes as well, as I did in that last video. And I'm going to show it. When it comes to blind testing, it's interesting. So whenever you can test something with a proper null test and things are nulling, a blind test is really not necessary because, you know, when you can prove that there's no difference in the exact bit stream that your converter is sending out to your speakers, a blind test really, you know, it makes no sense. When a blind test makes sense is whenever you cannot null something, whenever you cannot create a null test. For instance, in my RME power supply video, I'm gonna link that one over here. There was no way where I could reliably create a null test for this. And I've tried a lot of things. I couldn't. So then you get into a listen test, a blind listen test or whatever. And it's confusing. It's really confusing. I really recommend you to watch that video. But that's where a blind test can help. But even then, to set up a blind test is already very, very difficult to do. It's not super simple. Another comment I had was this one. Are you using heat in Pro Tools? So heat is like a warming thing. Let's see. I don't know how it works. So I can enable that over here, and by using heat, I can drive my individual channels a little bit. It makes it all sound a little bit more analog. I didn't use heat because, you know, if I would be using heat, I would get a difference. And we are actually looking for a perfect null. Reason why we're looking for a perfect null, because that's the only thing we can draw conclusions from. If we have a perfect null, it means that there's no difference. If there is some kind of difference, it doesn't point us to where the difference comes from. If I would be using heat, there will be a difference, but I wouldn't know if that's because of heat or not. And honestly, you've got heat in Pro Tools, but there's like other algorithms in other DAWs as well. And I see this as an add-on to the DAW, not the pure DAW sound. Although for heat, you can discuss that it only comes with Pro Tools. But that's not what I'm looking for in this video. I'm really looking for, hey, does the DAW by default make a different sound? Like, is the engineering behind it different? Is the summing behind it different? And that's what I was trying to prove. I got two, or actually multiple, but I got two comments. It's normally pen law differences. Check the pen law value in different DAWs. When conducting a null test, it must be identical. So what pen law is basically the amount of decibels that a sound is being lowered when you are penning that particular sound to the center of your stereo field. So if you have a pen law of 3 decibels, it's usually -3 decibels, and you have a sound on your left speaker and you decide to pen that to the center with your panning knob, it will be 3 decibels lower in volume. The reason why this exists is because you're going from one sound source to 2 sound sources. So all of a sudden, the sound is coming out of 2 speakers and you have to compensate for that. And there are a lot of philosophies behind what the best pen law is. But that is what pen law is, and this is a function connected directly to the pen knob. This is not something that a DAW applies to already stereo content. In my testing, I have 4 stereo stems, which are panned like to the left and to the right channel, right channel for the stereo stems. Whenever there's a sound in the center, the DAW doesn't apply a pen law on that. It's literally just connected to the pen knob of a DAW. And whenever I am keeping everything, you know, stereo in the center, whatever, the pen law is not going to make a difference. And I'm gonna prove this because, again, my test was a little bit flawed, but now I'm gonna prove it. Another comment here, really interesting one. Personally, I believe the perceived differences people say they experience comes down to the UI and UX of each application. The application makes you end up with a different mix because it feels different to use. It's not that the software sounds different, it is that the software makes you use it differently and you end up with a different sounding mix. This is the whole audio thing. Like, we listen with our eyes and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I think that's a human thing. That's why skeuomorphic interfaces where you have like an analog interface on your screen, why that works. And also why having a big ass vacuum tube on your t-shirt works. YGshop.com. And you know, the workflow, the coloring, the ease of use of something can really alter your perception on how something sounds. Because if you feel good while making music, your music will sound better. It feels better. Everything is better. And if you feel like shit when making your music sounds like shit. At least to you. All right. So I had a few flaws in my testing, and this came up in a few comments as well. In a Reaper session, you used to bounce. Your stems are resampled because the session and the item are not the same. And I think they mean sample rate here. That's why there is some blue icon on the items, and that's why you get some differences. You just activated the resampling algorithm. And this made me think, because yes, I did indeed activate the resample algorithm. In Reaper, it happens on the fly. In Pro Tools, it happens while you import it. In Logic, I think it resamples also while you import it. And if you look at Reaper, you can have different resample modes. I've actually tweaked mine. I have everything at R8 Brain. Should be the best. It also says at highest quality. I should maybe test this anyway, but sometimes I think by default the playback resample mode is set at 64 points and the render one at, I don't know, 384 or something. This already says that it's resampling differently between playbacking and rendering. And then, you know, Pro Tools is using a different upsampling algorithm and Logic. So that's where those differences were. That's where those clicks were. Because what I did is I lowered all my stems to -12, I think. Also to make sure that we don't have the fader curve issue. So I lowered everything, so everything is in a reasonable level. Then made an export of those stems in 96 kilohertz so that all DAWs have the same source and do not have to resample anymore. And I did a verification test, and here it is, Logic versus Reaper. Now, I don't know if you can see this. Let me show you my screen here. So we are playing, and our converter shows -infinite, like no level, like nothing. There's nothing coming out of it. So we've got a perfect null here. Logic and Reaper both sound the same. Now, how does this go with Pro Tools? Let's try it out. So Pro Tools, and we've got, again, a perfect null. And the perfect null is what we're looking for, because there's only one reason why something nulls. Now, I wanted to spice this up a little bit, and I've installed Luna from Universal Audio because they claim that they're doing something different. So what I did here is I made a Luna verify as well. This is the difference between, you know, Logic, Reaper or Pro Tools, because they are the same. I can just use one of them. And Luna. And in Luna, we are indeed seeing a difference in sound. And this is where things get difficult, because what is the exact difference? Like, it has these API vision plugins, whatever. Now I turned them off and I still get a difference. Verifying what that difference actually is is going to be very difficult. Does it mean that Luna sounds different? Yeah, kinda. It can also be some phase swapping somewhere in the frequency spectrum, and that, you know, makes a big difference in a null test, but doesn't make a big difference in how something is sounding. This is something where we are going to need to dig deeper. Let me remove Luna from the equation right now, because again, it doesn't null right now. So for our further testing, we cannot rely on a null test to really test this. One of the things I saw in a few comments was that I was null testing in Reaper. And by doing that, my testing was flawed because, according to the comments, I was testing the differences in sound between different DAWs, but I'm testing it in a DAW that should be having a different sound, blah, blah, blah. Now, there is a whole part of that video that I edited out because it was very boring, where I did actually test if it would make a difference to do the null test in a different DAW. So for this video, for those commenters, I am going to quickly show you in Pro Tools that if I use these same verification files that I just used in Reaper, there we go. So again, we've got Pro Tools on playback. We've got nothing coming out of the converter. Let's do the same with Logic against Reaper. Nulling, nulling. And what we see here is we see our level going down, going down. It's like a delayed thing. And it will end up at UFL as like no level. So I think we can really rely on Reaper to do the null tests in. Now, another test that I wanted to do is what would happen if we would add plugins to the mix. Like, is there a difference in how these different DAWs handle different plugins? So what I did is I made a simple chain with FabFilter plugins, a Pro Q4, a Saturn with a little bit of saturation, and a Pro C. Now, please note that in Reaper, I'm using VST plugins, because we're testing something else here as well. I bounced a mix of this from Reaper. I bounced a mix of this from Pro Tools. So I've used the same settings. I actually made presets. That's the cool thing about FabFilter. It's independent of which DAW you're using. The presets are just stored with the plugin. And I bounced a mix from Logic. Now I said, keep in mind that we're using VST in Reaper, because Pro Tools uses AAX plugins and Logic uses audio unit plugins. So there's a difference between those plugins already. So I've bounced these mixes over here. So we've got our Pro Tools one over here and our Reaper one over here. And let's press play and see what my output is doing. So we are playing back here. It's awfully silent, like, but we do see some output here. Actually, minus 97, 96. So there's no perfect null here. So that means there is a difference between Pro Tools and Reaper as soon as you start using plugins. So what I want to do now is use my output booster here and boost the output with 80 decibels, because I want to know what's not nulling, what's happening here. All right, so here we go. It's a whole bunch of noise, and noise is something interesting because there's noise being introduced somewhere in the plugin processing or something. And the thing with noise is it's random. So even if both DAWs are inserting this noise, it's random noise, so it won't null. Let's compare Pro Tools against Logic with the same output booster. Yeah, we're basically getting the same noise. Let's do it against Reaper as well to really, you know, make this whole thing come round. Still noise. So all these three DAWs produce a bit of this noise. Mind you, 80 decibels lower than this. It's like our noise floor somewhere. So they all produce noise. It's random noise, so that's why it doesn't exactly null. But I do think that we can say that these three DAWs, even though they all have their differences, process audio in the same way. But I know we're not done yet, because I know how comments work, being a YouTuber for 8 years and going to a mental health clinic to deal with all the comments. I didn't do enough testing. I didn't work hard enough. I didn't do my best. No, because there must be a difference in live playback. I mean, we were listening to rendered files up until now. We were listening to bounces. And, you know, I've showed in Reaper, there's difference between rendering and playback when it comes to resampling. Now, we're not doing any resampling because everything is at 96 kilohertz. But if there's a difference in resample mode, there must be other things that a DAW does do different during the live playback compared to a rendered. So, you know, the sound that you're listening to while you are working on it can be different from the sound of your rendered or bounced file. So, what I did is I used the loop backing of my Army Total Mix whatever thing. Oh, you can actually see my voice here because, yeah, that is being routed to... Yeah, anyway. So I used the loop back feature to basically loop back what is being sent to my converter. So loop back what I'm listening and recording that back. I use Reaper for this. You think that I should have done this in another DAW? Do your own testing, please. So I looped it back, recorded it, aligned everything perfectly. You can see that over here if I zoom in. This is our group, and Reaper shows an overlay of all the stems in our group here. You can see that everything is perfectly aligned. Let me go to a bit more transient area, something over here. You can see that I did like I aligned it precisely. So we got Reaper and Pro Tools live output against each other. Let's see what we get. So we are playing back and we are getting the same thing. I think if I enable my output booster now, same random noise. So how's that against Logic then? Same random noise stuff. How is Pro Tools against Logic? Same random noise. Now, that means that when playing back, all DAWs sound the same. But how do they perform compared to themselves? So if I use the live output from Pro Tools and compare that, null test this against a bounced version from Pro Tools, will there be a difference there? Isn't just the thing that all these DAWs just sound the same, but different when we compare a rendered version to the live output version? Let's listen. Let's output boost. Same thing. How does that work with Reaper? Let's output boost. Same thing. How does that work with Logic? Let's output boost. Same thing. So yeah, from my testing, I don't think there is a difference between the different DAWs. No, I didn't get a full null test, and that does mean something. That means that there's a difference and there are a million reasons why something doesn't null. But listening to the nulled result at 80 decibels boost only gives us noise. And my conclusion would be there's no difference between these DAWs. And the way that science works is really interesting, because what I now want you to do is prove me wrong, because that's science. Please prove me wrong. As for Luna, there is a difference. That's what they're claiming. Harrison is claiming that there's a difference. I couldn't test this as well for Studio One, FL Studio and all that kind of stuff. Reasons for that is actually pretty interesting. My Mac Mini is full. I don't have any more storage space on the Mac Mini. I cannot install more DAWs on here. The Mac Mini is split between a work system and a test system that I use for these things, so that I don't fuck up my work system that I need to use on a day-to-day basis in my music studio. It's full. The SSD is full. So if you want me to do more testing and you want to support the channel so that I can buy a new Mac Mini, check out my affiliate links. They are over here. They're also in the description down below. As said, check out YT's shop as well for merchandise, or become a channel member. Starting at 99 cents per month, you get a little star behind your name when commenting, so you can show everybody that you are supporting the channel. There's also an early access tier to get early access to videos like this one, and an exclusive content tier, which I'm gonna link over here. Last way to support me and the whole YouTube platform is watching more videos. Link in this video over here. Thanks a lot for watching, keep pushing, and bye bye.